Is it time to start giving Aaron Glenn some credit? Let's discuss it on a Wednesday. Locked on Lions.
You are Locked On Lions, your daily Detroit Lions podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's good, everybody? Matt Derry with you. It's a Wednesday edition of Locked On Lions right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Indeed, your team every day. It's Wednesday, October 4th and a Thursday, October 5th. Tomorrow, Locked On Thursday crossover brought to you by PrizePicks. Julian Council, host of the Locked On Panthers podcast, will join us. If you missed yesterday's show, it was awesome. Jonathan Stewart, Jay Stu, former Panther running back and Pro Bowler, who actually visited with the Lions years ago. Was our guest yesterday, and he was just absolutely great. It was a great interview. Jonathan Network from the Believe in Panthers podcast joined us yesterday. Go back and watch it or listen to it if you missed yesterday. Coming up on today's show, got to talk about the Lions defense. You realize the Lions right now have a top 5 defense if you go by yards allowed? Top 5. I know it's only 4 games, but we have to give them credit where credit is due. A lot of talk about Jahmyr Gibbs and his touches. What's going on there? Could Sunday's game be a trap game? Could Sunday's game be a little bit of a trap game against Carolina? We'll get into that. And also we'll go through the Locked On Podcast Network power rankings for this week, where the Lions rank in terms of pecking order in the NFL. But thanks for making us your first listen. Thanks to our everydayers that are out there, including my guy, Dan Zeck. He's an everydayer. Everybody that watches the podcast on our Locked On Lions YouTube channel, please subscribe. Or whether you are listening wherever you get your podcasts, we appreciate you. Follow us on Twitter at Derry Speaks, at Locked On Lions, and of course, the Matt Derry Facebook fan page. All right, I was looking up some numbers, and I'm going to give you some stats. I was looking up some numbers today, and it came to me. It was like an epiphany. I'm looking at the wrong numbers. You're looking at what Jared Goff's doing, and David Montgomery, and averaging this, 4 yards a carry and this and that and 5 touchdowns and all these things. And I want to talk about David Montgomery in a second. But the defense has really shined as of late. Remember, they held the Falcons to 6 points, held the Packers to 20 this past week. And you have to give Aaron Glenn, who's been, kind of embattled as the Lions defensive coordinator for the past 2+ seasons, you've got to give Aaron Glenn some credit. Really, the Lions have had 1 out of 4 bad defensive performances so far this year. And for some odd reason, they just can't stop Seattle. All right, you go back 2 years, 3 years, whatever. Go back to the playoff game years ago when Jim Caldwell was coaching and the Lions couldn't stop. I don't even remember the running back's name. That was, it wasn't even Chris Carson. It was, Thomas Rawls. Thomas Rawls. The Lions could not stop in that playoff game out in Seattle. But regardless, the Lions defense has been playing pretty well. And I was looking it up today. And, all right, let's start with points per game allowed. Dallas has the great defense right now, only giving up 10.3 points per game. Buffalo, San Francisco, Baltimore, Cleveland under Jim Schwartz, Jimmy Handshake. He's doing well as a defense coordinator. But the Lions are a top 13 defense in terms of scoring defense. They're giving up just 20.8 points per game. But when it comes to yards per game, what the opponents are really doing, chunk plays, etc., the Lions are a top 5 defense. Cleveland's number 1, giving up 196 a game, which is insanely good. Dallas, number 2, giving up 259. Ravens, 260. Lions, 280. 280.5 yards per game through 4 games. That's pretty good. And yes, some of the opponents might not be great. We know about, the last couple of weeks they faced, Desmond Ridder, who's nothing special, Jordan Love, who we're still finding out about. But, and yes, we know Taylor Swift's boyfriend didn't play in week 1. But seriously, the Lion defense is getting better. All right. A lot of it is scheme. Some of it is Brad Holmes, the GM, and the job that he's done in drafting and the additional depth that this team has, even with injuries, with Chauncey Gardner-Johnson being out and Kirby Joseph being out and other players missing games. The Lions defense has stepped up. They have got good depth. But let's talk a little bit about what Aaron Glenn and the Lions are doing. Mixing up coverages, all right? Not showing the same looks in each game. All right. Seattle, Atlanta, they came after the quarterback. They really, after being maligned for not getting to Geno Smith, blitzed a little bit more against the Falcons, showed some different looks. It wasn't a lot of blitzing, but it was enough that we saw Aaron Glenn say, listen, what happened in week 2 was unacceptable. And in week 3, we got to be better. And they came after Desmond Ridder to the tune of 7 sacks. And then this past week, another 5. So you got to give him credit. And I know it's easy to pick on, I call him future head coach Aaron Glenn, and we're having fun. It's a joke. But in all seriousness, he's taken a defense that, last I checked, there aren't any Pro Bowlers yet on this defense. There aren't any all pros yet on this defense. Yes, Aiden Hutchinson's having a great start to the year. Guy like Chauncey Gardner-Johnson came in, was the interception leader last season. He's out for the season, right? You like what you have in Cam Sutton and some of the other additions, but the coaching is there. And if you continue to play this kind of defense, and look, it should continue this week. Heck, it should continue next week against Tampa Bay. And by the way, that game has been moved to 4:25. So it's the Fox primetime late afternoon slot, Lions and Bucks, because Tampa Bay is playing well. So the Lions have already been flexed to a 4:25 game in 2 weeks. But regardless of the opposition and everything else, and we know about the quarterback play in the NFC, it's not very good, but you've got to give Glenn and his staff some credit. And I was concerned when they lost Todd Wash, the defensive line coach, in the offseason to Carolina. He comes back to town this week along with Deuce Staley and DJ Chark, among others. But Lions haven't missed a beat. You're seeing players improve. All right. Aleem McNeil has taken the next step so far. He's played well. Aiden Hutchinson looks like a superstar. Right. Derek Barnes has stepped up. Anzalone's playing good football. It's nice to see. And you've got to give the coaching staff and Aaron Glenn some credit. I never thought in a million years we would sit here and talk about this defense 4 games in being a top 5 defense and being better than the likes of San Francisco, Buffalo, Kansas City, right? We knew New Orleans had a pretty good defense. They're top 10. All right. Now there's some bad defenses in the league. Think about this. The Lions are giving up 280 yards a game. Denver's giving up 461. The Chargers, 404. Right? Carolina, actually, not too bad at 313. But still, everybody's talking about the Browns defense. And whoa, what a job Jim Schwartz is doing, and Myles Garrett, and all of this stuff. Dallas, everybody's discussing that. All the national experts, Micah Parsons, Cowboys don't miss a beat even with Diggs out. They're playing great football. Baltimore, we know how good their defense is, and they got a break this past week facing DTR and not Deshaun Watson. But regardless, the Ravens always have a good defense. Always. And then you got the Lions. 4th best in terms of yards per game allowed. That, my friends, is how you win. Yes, you want to have an offense. You got to have a passing game. It's a passing league. So far, if you've been paying attention and watching these other games, offenses have struggled a little bit. And for the Lions to look up and say, they held the Chiefs in check. They held the Falcons in check. Everybody was talking about being worried about Bijan Robinson coming into that game. The Lions kept them to 32, 35 yards. And this past week, same thing. Played good football at Lambeau with an offense that came on strong against the Saints the week before and completely obliterated them. And it also helps that the Lions are ground and pounding on the ground with their run game and keeping the other team's offense off the field. But still, Lions are doing a nice job. And you've got to give Aaron Glenn some credit. Carolina, Tampa coming up, the Raiders. These are not great offenses that the Lions are going to be seeing the next few weeks. So we'll see if this continues. But it's been good so far. And players have improved, and you got to give the coaching staff some credit. All right, coming up next, the Jahmyr Gibbs discussion. Fantasy owners aren't happy, but I think Lions fans should be happy. And I'm going to explain why coming up next. Our partners at eBay Motors have teamed up with Locked On Fantasy Football host Vinny Iyer to bring you some of the best fantasy picks each week, all season long, whether you're prepping for a daily draft or scouting the waiver wire. Every week, we're going to provide you with players that are guaranteed to fit on your roster. So let's see who Vinny has picked out for us on this week's episode, installment of eBay's Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Picks of the Week. Now, I hope he's right because I've got this guy on my team. Jets running back Breece Hall has had a tough season so far. Yeah, terrible. Limited usage, but his explosive 56-yard rushing game on only 6 carries against the Chiefs last week is great foreshadowing for his best game of the season this week. When the Jets blow through Denver in week 5, look for Hall to fly a mile high with his speed and explosiveness. The Broncos defense is falling apart against the run, especially versus faster back. Expect Hall to go off to help the Jets try to get a much-needed road win. Vinny Iyer from Locked On Fantasy Football going to help you win your fantasy championship. And eBay Motors knows a championship team is about each player being a perfect fit. Same with your vehicle. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you can make sure your ride stays running smoothly. Brake kits, LED headlights, roof rack, bumpers, whatever your baby needs, eBay Motors has it. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. If you have a personal experience about buying a car through eBay Motors, it's simple. It's the same one that I have. If you're trying to get auto parts anywhere else, don't do it. Get them at ebaymotors.com. It has been that easy, hassle-free. It's great to click on and shop. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. All right, so a lot of talk nationally. Look, when you have a good team, you start getting fans nitpicking. All right, many of you despise when I bring up Jameson Williams, but the proof is in the pudding. Jameson Williams has played a handful of games for the Lions. He has not made an impact. Now that he's back, Dan Campbell's basically said, we just want him to be reliable. All right, they're not exactly thinking big with Jameson Williams, and I have to bring that up on the show. And many of you think I'm a hater, whatever. It's a fact. We'll see. We'll see how many touches he gets this week, how many snaps he plays. Then we'll see who's right. I hope I'm wrong. Anyway, and don't think I don't talk to people in the building. What was I saying? Oh, anyway, so people are complaining about Jahmyr Gibbs so far. And I'm not even going to read you Jahmyr Gibbs' numbers and tell you about the times that he's been out there. And again, I was disappointed in the Jahmyr Gibbs usage in the Seattle game. I would have liked to have seen him more. Heck, and in the Kansas City game, and every time he touched the ball, he did great. And then there were series that he wasn't on the field. But you know why Jahmyr Gibbs isn't playing a lot? And Austin Eckler pointed this out yesterday from the Chargers. And Jonathan Stewart pointed it out on the show yesterday. It's going to take some time for rookies, especially a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs, who's a little bit smaller and is playing behind a veteran like David Montgomery, to get the opportunities. The Lions are going for it. So they're not just handing a running back's job to a rookie. Now, they have to give Sam Laporta, the tight end, the job because he's clearly the better guy than Brock Wright or James Mitchell or anybody else. But as far as Jahmyr Gibbs, he's not the best running back on this team. David Montgomery is. David Montgomery is 26 years old. He's been around. He's in the prime of his career. He's been through NFC North battles. He's averaging 4 yards a carry. He's scored 5 touchdowns the first 4 games. And remember, he missed a game. He missed the Atlanta game. He had 121 yards rushing the other day against Green Bay. He just punishes defenses. And that's the kind of style and that's the kind of football that the Lions want to play. All right? I want to see Jahmyr Gibbs more. I'll be the first to tell you. I want to see him in the slot. I want to see him in motion. I want to see him being used in the wide receiver, in the passing game more as a wide receiver. He can do it. I'd love to see him out wide, come in for a slant, 6-yard, 7-yard slant, something. I don't think Ben Johnson, who is a fantastic offensive coordinator, and by the way, I predict could be the next head coach of the Chicago Bears next year because Matt Eberflus is trash. But Ben Johnson, I don't think knows yet what he has in Jahmyr Gibbs. And I think they want to keep the training wheels on just a little bit longer. Again, I could be wrong. And this Sunday, he could have a huge game against Carolina. Could be. But they're still figuring it out. But it's tough to take David Montgomery off the field when he's reliable. He's 26. He's breaking tackles. He's punishing linebackers and defensive linemen. And last game, you did have to keep feeding him. And he's much better in between the tackles and Gibbs. You can make the argument you want to send Gibbs out wide on a jet sweep or something. He's going to be better than Montgomery in that spot. Sure. Is he a better receiver out of the backfield? Yes. I think Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be an excellent kind of weapon as a receiver when they figure it out. But right now, Josh Reynolds needs to play. Khalif Raymond needs to play. You're not taking Amon-Ra St. Brown off the field. Neither are you taking Sam Laporta out. They love 12 personnel, when they have Brock Wright or Mitchell and Sam Laporta on the field at the same time, right? So it's a tough call. And now fans are going to want to see J-Mo this Sunday. And I don't think that's happening. I mean, it would not surprise me if he was inactive this week. It wouldn't. Now, he may play and Antoine Green could be inactive. That's very possible. But I'm just telling you, that would not surprise me. So I'm all for Gibbs seeing the ball more. When he's out there, he does touch it. You notice that? When Jahmyr Gibbs is on the field, that means he's usually getting the ball. But the way David Montgomery's playing right now, it's very difficult to get Jahmyr on the field. And I'm going to have a little bit more patience than I thought I was going to have. Week 1, I was tweeting out during the game, keep Gibbs on the field, get him the ball. What are they doing? Come on, Ben Johnson. But now I'm starting to see the value of what Demo or Monty, as they call him, brings to the table. So we got to exercise, I think, a little bit more patience when it comes to that situation. But again, that's difficult to do because Jahmyr Gibbs was drafted number 12. You could make the argument and say, well, wait a minute. Why isn't Jahmyr Gibbs playing more? Why didn't you just draft Jalen Carter in that spot instead of Gibbs? All right. You could go there. You could absolutely go there. But I think all in all, we've got to give, I think we got to give Gibbs a little bit more time. He is still learning, but I like what I see from him. I like how much speed he has. He is explosive. I think he's going to break out and break loose at some point, but I just don't think it's yet. And when David Montgomery's going well, you got to keep him on the field. All right. Coming up next, I want to get into, what do I want to get into? I want to get into talking about power rankings and the dreaded trap game. We will do that coming up next. Locked On Lions is sponsored by BetterHelp. All right. Bottom line is this. You may want to talk to somebody. You may be going through things personally, and now's the time. All right. BetterHelp is the place to go. Did you ever feel like your brain is getting in its own way? Do you ever feel like you know what you should do and what's good for you, but you just can't do it? And you need to talk to somebody. You need to get some help. The online therapy at BetterHelp is the way to go. If you benefited from therapy before, feel free to share your experience. Is what it says on this beautiful script. Well, I have. All right. I enjoy talking to my therapist. I need to talk to her, and I go every other week, and it's good for me. And maybe you're a little bit concerned about meeting somebody new or going to an office. That's the beauty of BetterHelp. All right. If you're thinking about starting therapy, give them a try. It's completely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you gotta do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Make your brain your friend with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Julian Council, the voice of Locked On Panthers, is going to join us tomorrow. Locked On Lions for a Wednesday. That'll be the Thursday crossover tomorrow. Look, here's the bottom line. All I'm reading about and hearing about with the Panthers is Carolina has no receivers, and they're looking for a receiver. Austin Corbett, one of their best offensive linemen, is hurt, and so Bryce Young keeps getting sacked. The Panthers have no chance. They're 9-point favorite or 9-point underdogs coming into town. Lions have a big game all of a sudden coming up next week in Tampa Bay. They've moved it to 425. Bucks are off to a 3-1 start. They're playing good football. It's going to be on the road. It'll be the Burkhardt and Greg Olsen and Aaron Andrews and Tom Rinaldi game all of a sudden. This has trap game written all over. There is nobody that's going to pick the Carolina Panthers to beat the Detroit Lions this Sunday? Nobody. Find me anybody. Go to Charlotte and ask them. Do you think the 0-4 Panthers that can't protect their quarterback, by the way, he's a rookie and he's undersized, and his best receiver is like Adam Thielen, who's 45 years old. Shout out DJ Chark. But seriously, no one's picking the Panthers. The Lions have got to be careful. The one thing that scares me about this week is the same thing that happened last year. Lions went down to Carolina, and I know that field was a cement paver and the whole thing, but Carolina ran the football on the Lions, and that's what Frank Reich's going to try to do. He's hoping that the Chuba Hubbards of the world and that crew are going to get loose, and they're going to keep the ball out of the hands of Jared Goff. So play action passing, running game. You know, Reich has watched the film from last year. He wasn't the head coach last year. It was Steve Wilkes, but still, Carolina blistered the Lions on the ground a year ago. And they got a couple of guys that can run the rock. And I feel like it might just be a little bit of a trap game. And this is a bad Panthers team. But I don't think anybody thought they would be 0-4. But here they are. As far as the Locked On NFL Power Rankings for Week 5, voted by all of us, the Locked On Podcast hosts, the Lions are where they were last week. They are number 7 in the NFL out of 32 teams. San Francisco is 1. Buffalo moved up to number 2. Philly at number 3, undefeated. Kansas City 4. Dallas 5. And it was interesting to hear Jonathan Stewart yesterday say on the show he thinks the Lions are better than Dallas. Miami at 6 after their loss to the Bills. Lions 7, Ravens 8, Seahawks 9, and Jaguars 10. Don't have an issue with that. The Lions are a top 10 team. You could make an argument that Seattle is ahead of the Lions because Seattle beat the Lions, but Seahawks, of course, lost more recently than the Lions last week or 2 weeks ago, as opposed to when the Lions lost to Seattle in week 2. Panthers come in, by the way, at 0-4 at number 31. So now that Denver won a football game, they're 30th, Bears at 32, and Panthers at 31. But the Lions coming in at number 7, I really don't have a big argument with it. I don't think the Lions are as good as Miami yet. I don't think the Lions are as good as Dallas, even though Jonathan Stewart said yesterday he thinks so. Kansas City, yes, the Lions beat them, but the Chiefs are the Chiefs. Philly's the class of the NFC until somebody knocks them off. And San Francisco and Buffalo are really, really good. I mean, the Niners are playing out of this world football right now. They are easily number 1, and they're going to host the Cowboys this weekend, I think on Sunday Night Football, and that's going to be a really, really good game. But let's take a deep breath and think about this for a second. The fact that we're sitting here on October 4th of 2023, when at this time a couple of years ago, the Lions could not win a football game, could not win a road game. Last year started off what were they at this point? 1-3, right? And we were ready to question the entire coaching staff and fire Aaron Glenn. And they were a bottom feeder in this league. Fast forward to October 4th, 2023, today. And on our own podcast network, Power Rankings, the Lions are a top 10 team, and they've been sitting there at number 7 for a couple of weeks. They continue to play pretty darn good football, and I think they can play even better. Now they're getting Jameson Williams back. They're winning the turnover battle. All right. They're doing really good things. Passing game could probably be better. Defense, for as good as it's played, could probably even be better. I like what I'm seeing. So number 7 in the league, that's pretty cool. Niners, Bills, Eagles, Chiefs, Cowboys, Dolphins, and then us. How about that? That's pretty awesome. So as far as this division goes, my God, I mean, Green Bay's 15. Minnesota comes in at 25, and the Bears are 32. The NFC North is it's a dumpster fire. It really is. All right, Julian Council, Locked On Panthers tomorrow. We'll be here Friday with some keys, and then we'll get you ready for Sunday's game at Ford Field, Lions and Panthers. A little rematch from last year when the Panthers just blistered the Lions. That was the Shane Zylstra 3-touchdown game. But the Lions have a good opportunity here this Sunday to take care of business at home. And I know my guy, Mike Vanderpool, and a few others are like, Don't say this is a lock. Carolina's looking, they're desperate. They need a win. Frank Reich has won games as a head coach in this league, whether it was in Indy, whether it was an assistant running the Eagles offense. The guy's pretty good. A little conservative for me at times, but we'll see what he dials up for this Sunday. All right, we'll do the crossover tomorrow right here on Locked On Lions. Thanks for making us your first listen, checking us out wherever you get your podcasts. And we are back again tomorrow.